Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Benjamin, and I have a question for you. What would you do if you walked into what looks like a surprise birthday party, but instead of the usual cake, you were handed divorce papers? Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's exactly what happened to me on my 35th birthday. But before you jump to any conclusions, let me take you back to the beginning. I met my wife, Catherine, at a club. We danced for a while. But when the song ended, we started talking. She left with her friends after that, but I managed to get her contact info before she walked out the door. A few days later, we were texting. Then, we started hanging out. Fast forward a few months, and we were officially dating. At that time, I was working at McKinsey. The pay wasn't bad for someone still climbing, but I wasn't rolling in cash either. When I got promoted to mid-level manager, I finally felt like it's the right time to take the next step. I got married to Catherine. It was fast, I know, but we were in love, and we had all the right reasons to be. Catherine was an artist. She had this free-spirited vibe to her, the kind of person who didn't follow the rules and just did whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. Her parents were low-key wealthy, so she didn't have the same worries I did about money and career. But even with all that, Catherine's parents didn't exactly accept me. I could tell they were supportive of the marriage because they didn't want their daughter to be single, especially since she was in her 30s at the time. But they didn't approve of me, at least not the way they should have. I wasn't from the same background as them, and I could see it in the way they looked at me. They were polite, sure, but there was this quiet disapproval, and I wasn't blind to it. But at the time, I didn't care. I thought, well, this is about me and Catherine, right? What do her parents have to do with our relationship? I didn't let it bother me, though, because I was in love with her, and she was in love with me. I figured that was all that mattered. After all, we didn't live with her parents, so how much of an impact could they have, right? But looking back now, I had no idea that their subtle opposition would come to play a bigger role in the downfall of everything I thought was perfect. When Catherine and I first got married, life felt perfect. We were both in love, and there was this sense of mutual admiration that came with being newly married. In the beginning, it all felt easy. I felt like we were on the same page. Even though I had a demanding job, we made time for each other. And for a while, it seemed like that was all we needed. But after a year or so of marriage, things started to change. The excitement of those early days started to wear off, and we began to face the reality of two different people living under one roof. The euphoria of those early days faded, and we were left with the reality of being married. When Catherine and I first got married, she used to message me all the time. While I was at work, I'd get little updates from her, what she was painting, where she was heading, even random thoughts that popped into her head. I looked forward to those texts. They made the stress at work easier to handle, especially during my lunch breaks. But then, those messages stopped coming. I'd check my phone during the day and see nothing. Not even a "hope your day's going okay." It was strange. When I got home from work, things didn't feel the same either. Catherine used to greet me at the door smile when I walked in. But now, most evenings, she barely lifted her head from whatever she was doing. Sometimes, I'd come in and not even get a word. No kiss, no hug, just silence or a tired wave. I didn't want to overthink it at first. I thought that it was just temporary until when things in the bedroom changed. That part of our relationship used to be passionate. Even after we got married, we kept that spark going. But gradually, that disappeared too. I tried to initiate intimacy, just like before. Most nights, she'd pull away gently and say she was tired. Other times, she'd already be asleep when I came to bed, or pretending to be. It kept getting worse. Catherine started spending more and more time out of the house. She'd say she was going to her parents' place, and that was her usual excuse. At first, I didn't question it. Her family lived about 2 hours away, and I knew she was close to them. But it became too frequent. Some weeks, she'd be gone 2 or 3 nights. She didn't tell me beforehand. I'd just come home and find the house empty. When I called her, she'd casually say, "Oh, I'm at my parents' place. They needed me to help with something." But something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. The woman I married, The one who used to smile at me for no reason, who would lean into me on the couch while we watched a movie. That woman was pulling away, step by step. And I didn't know why. I was confused, hurt, and honestly a little scared. I kept hoping it was just a phase. But deep down I knew. These were the first signs of something breaking. One night, when the weight of everything I'd been bottling up finally reached the tipping point. I couldn't take it anymore. So I turned to her and just asked, "Catherine, did I do something wrong?" I was genuinely confused. I wanted to know why she had stopped doing the little things she used to do. She looked at me and said, "No, you didn't do anything." I tried again. I asked, "Then why are you okay with going out and staying out so late without even letting me know where you are?" In the past, she would always check in. Not because I forced her to, but because she wanted to. She turned to look me dead in the eyes and asked, "Are you trying to control me now?" That hit me hard. I shook my head and told her, "No. I just think it's easier when we both share things. It keeps us on the same page." She didn't even try to understand where I was coming from. Instead, she rolled her eyes, turned her back on me, and said with a tired voice, "I'm not a baby, Benjamin." I laid there, staring at the ceiling, completely speechless. And it didn't get better after that night. If anything, it got worse. She kept disappearing, going out, coming back late, sometimes not coming home at all. And the strange part? If I didn't call or text her, I'd never even hear from her. She wouldn't say where she was or who she was with. Every time I asked, the answer was always the same. I was at my parents' place. That became her default excuse. But I knew something was off. My gut kept telling me that I was being lied to. So I made a decision by ordering a GPS tracker. I installed it on her car one Sunday evening. I needed to know the truth because trusting her word was no longer an option. From that point on, I stopped asking her questions. I just quietly watched the tracker, following her movements, checking where she went, comparing it to the stories she told me. I just didn't know how much the truth would break me when it finally hit. On the eve of my 35th birthday turned into the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in my life. That evening, I got home from work, hoping to relax. But as I walked through the door, it was clear Catherine, my wife, wasn't home. Now, I'm used to her being out sometimes, but considering it was the night before my birthday, I had expected her to at least be around, maybe planning something small. I looked around, checked my phone, no message from her, no missed calls. That's when I decided to check the GPS tracker I had installed on her car. And just like I feared, she wasn't at her parents' house like she always say. The car was parked somewhere else entirely, a location I didn't recognize. I took a deep breath and called her. When she picked up, her voice was calm. She said she was with her mom and that her mom had asked her to spend the night. I didn't confront her. I didn't argue. I just said okay and ended the call. But inside me, everything was boiling. I sat for a moment, thinking about whether I should just let it go or find out the truth for myself. My instincts won. I got into my car and drove out to the location the tracker had marked. It was a residential apartment complex. Her car was parked out front. I parked a little distance away and sat there watching. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe I thought I'd see her walk out. Or I was hoping she'd leave and give me some excuse that made sense. But she didn't. She was inside. For about 30 minutes, I just sat in my car. Then I made up my mind. I had to knock. I walked up to the door and knocked. A man opened it, casually dressed, maybe in his 30s like me. He looked confused, like someone who wasn't expecting company. I leaned a bit to the side, and that's when I saw her, my wife, Catherine. She was sitting on the sofa. The moment our eyes met, everything stopped. She froze. The man turned to look at her, then looked back at me. "Who are you, and why are you looking into my house?" the man asked. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "I'm the husband of the lady sitting on your sofa." His face changed immediately, shock with confusion. He turned back to her, clearly waiting for some kind of explanation. But Catherine said nothing. She just sat there, stunned. The man turned back to me and said, "She never told me she was married." I didn't shout. Then she finally spoke. "Why are you following me around?" she asked. I didn't answer. I didn't see the point in arguing right there in front of a stranger in his own home. So I left. I got back in my car and drove home. I stayed up that night waiting for her. I thought maybe she'd come home, but she didn't. Instead, she went straight to her parents' house. The next day, I didn't go anywhere. I just sat at home, waiting for her to walk in and explain what the hell she was doing. But she never did. Instead, I got a phone call that evening from her mother of all people. Now, I want you to understand something. Catherine's parents never liked me. They never really said it to my face, but their actions were loud. Her dad barely ever acknowledged me, and her mom, well, let's just say every conversation with her was like walking on glass. But this call? It didn't sound like her at all. She was calm. She said, "Benjamin, I heard there was a little misunderstanding between you and Catherine. Why don't you come over so we can all iron things out together as a family?" I remember holding the phone to my ear and thinking, wait, what? Since when did her mom start acting like a mediator? It felt off. But she didn't stop there. Just before ending the call, she added, "Oh, and since today's your birthday, we'll also celebrate it here. We already have some things set up." That part threw me completely off balance. I hung up the phone and just stood there for a while. I didn't know what to feel. Angry? Nervous? Hopeful? I was definitely confused. A part of me thought, her mom saw how things were falling apart and wanted to help put them back together. So I got dressed, got in my car, and started the 2-hour drive to their house. I remember driving a little faster than usual. I didn't know what to expect, but I wanted to get it over with. When I pulled into their driveway, the first thing I noticed was the balloons and ribbons. There were cars parked out front and laughter coming from the backyard. For a second, I hesitated. It felt like I was walking into a party, not a tense family intervention. I stepped inside and saw her whole family there, smiling, chatting, holding drinks. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. Then Catherine walked up to me. She held out a manila folder and with a forced grin said, "Surprise. I'm leaving you." Then her whole family started clapping. I stood there frozen. My brain couldn't process what was happening. Divorce papers? I had to sit down. I found the nearest chair and dropped into it. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. I kept thinking, how? How did they plan this whole thing so quickly? The night before, I caught her in another man's house, and now, less than 24 hours later, they had legal papers drawn up and a whole audience for the big reveal. Had this been their plan all along? Catherine stood in front of me, holding those papers like a trophy, and her family stood behind her like a team proud of their win. I took the folder from her, opened it, and skimmed through. Everything looked in order. At that moment, I realized I wasn't just losing my wife. I had been played from start to finish. I could feel my heart breaking, but I kept my face steady. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. So I took the pen from inside the folder, signed the divorce papers, closed it back up, and handed it over without saying a single word. Then I stood up, walked out the same door I came through, got into my car, and drove away. But inside I was in pieces. My marriage had ended in the most humiliating way possible. The days after the divorce felt like I had walked straight into a nightmare and couldn't wake up. I didn't even realize how deeply I loved Catherine until I had to face life without her. I wasn't eating right, I couldn't sleep, and my thoughts were all over the place. I told myself, she cheated on you, man. She lied to your face and chose someone else. I tried to use that as a reason to move on, to be angry enough to forget. But the pain didn't care. It stayed. There were nights drinking became a way to escape. I just wanted something to numb the hurt for a few hours. My work suffered. My manager called me after I missed 2 straight days. That's when I realized I was spiraling. I didn't want to lose everything just because one thing broke me. One of my close friends came over one evening and found me sitting on the floor with a bottle in my hand. He looked at me and said, "Bro, you gotta hold it together. I get it, you're hurting, but you can't keep doing this. You gotta pull yourself out of it, like a man." At first, I was mad. I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want advice. But he didn't leave. He sat with me the whole night and just listened. That was the first time I thought, I do need help. I started seeing a therapist. That first session, I didn't even know what to say. I sat there in silence for most of it. But I kept going back. Slowly, I started unpacking things. My therapist didn't judge me. She helped me understand that I wasn't weak for feeling broken. I was just human. By the third month, I began to breathe again. I won't lie and say everything suddenly got better, but at least I wasn't drowning anymore. Divorce is brutal. I don't care how strong or prepared you think you are. When you've shared your life, your bed, your dreams with someone, and they suddenly pull the rug out from under you, it does something to your soul. But little by little, I started finding pieces of myself again. 6 months had passed since that humiliating day at Catherine's family home. I was learning to find peace in my own company. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. Unknown number. I usually ignore those, but the need for distraction made me pick up. And when I heard the voice from the other end, it was Catherine. She sounded nervous and wasn't sure I would stay on the line. Please, she said. Don't hang up. Just hear me out. I didn't say anything at first. I thought about ending the call, but something told me to listen. So I stayed silent and she kept talking. She confessed. Right there, over the phone. Said her parents were behind everything. The lies, the cheating, even the plan to make sure her new man never knew she was married. According to her, they wanted her to leave me and be with someone they approved of, someone on her level. I could barely believe what I was hearing. She admitted they pressured her into the affair, told her to hide her marriage, and encouraged her to go through with the divorce quickly. I couldn't hold it in. I asked her point blank, did you even love that guy, or were you just following your parents like a puppet? She hesitated, then muttered something about how she thought she was doing the right thing. I asked her, then why are you calling me now? Her answer? Because I ended things with him. I realized I never truly loved him. I made a mistake. I laugh. Did you end things, or did he dump you after finding out you were married? Silence. No response. And then she started crying. Said she wanted us back. That she missed what we had. That she was sorry. But I didn't feel pity. I was angry, not just at her, but at myself for ever thinking she was different. I told her flat out, there is no us. That chapter is closed. You need to move on just like I have. And then, without another word, I ended the call. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. The text started the next day. Long messages. Apologies. Begging. Telling me she had nightmares about what she did. Promising she had changed. Some days I ignored them. Other days, I'd type a response and delete it before sending. I knew nothing I said would fix what was broken. She made her choice. And I made mine. Sometimes I wonder, could I have handled things differently? Maybe. But one thing I know for sure is that some damage can't be undone, no matter how badly the other person wishes it could. Forgiveness is one thing. But reconciliation? That's a different beast entirely. Now I leave this with you. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have given her another chance? Or would you have walked away like I did? Let me know. I'll be reading the comments.